Welcome back to Marvelous Videos. I'm Rylan, and today we'll be taking a look at New York's Scariest Haunted House Tour, Hell House, LLC, 2015, Explored. Exploring a haunted house as the main setting for a horror film might make you think, well, that's a bit tacky. However, Hell House, LLC will prove you wrong by a mile. It is a mockumentary, curated documentary style, which switches between found footage of the organizers of the haunted house to those looking into it post the haunting incident. While there are a few jump scares in the movie, the eeriness of the footage is what will really get your skin to crawl. While the found footage concept isn't exactly a novel idea for horror films, very few manage to actually do justice to it. So, if you are a fan of the Blair Witch Project or The Taking of Deborah Logan, then this film is definitely for you. So, let's get discussing Hell House LLC, directed by Stephen Cognetti. However, we must establish a trigger warning here. There will be descriptions and discussions that include blood, murder, and suicide galore. Additionally, before we get into our explanation, we have just a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is just a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks. Now then, let's begin.
Sarah, you okay?
Scariest Haunted House Tour, Hell House, LLC, 2015. The film starts with Diane Graves interviewing people about the events that took place in the abandoned hotel, which is situated on the outskirts of New York City, on the opening night of Hell House in 2009. We then see clips on the news about the aftermath, where the police and ambulances had arrived to help the injured. Numerous fatalities of the crew as well as the visitors were reported. Diane interviews people who were keen enough to explore the incident, unlike the majority of the township who wanted to bury it under a technical malfunction when it was evident that something supernatural was at play. From one of the visitors' footage at the start, we see how things in the haunted house took an ugly turn. We begin hearing whisperings of "this wasn't supposed to happen" coming from the crew as doors began shutting and things began to shatter. Lastly, the basement, which harbored the supposed exit for the visitors, was actually where the worst incidents took place, and all those at the foot of the staircase struggled to get back up frantically through the crowd, and this is where the camera cuts. The visitor footage was uploaded to YouTube initially, but later taken down when the incident was buried. The families of the victims were left in the dark, and their cause of death was deemed due to a malfunction. The 911 call made by a visitor that day is played, and the static noises along with the panicked screams can be heard. A girl says "into the wall" in an attempt to explain what is happening before the call disconnects. We will understand what this means later in the film. All this evidence clearly showcases that these deaths were not due to a malfunction. Diane also interviews Martin Cliver, who is a photographer who broke into Hell House after a while to take pictures of what's left behind. He stated how the basement doors were blown off its hinges and there was blood everywhere on the floor. However, he decided to not venture into the basement and left after taking pictures of the staircase. The detailing and hesitation in how people act in the film is what makes Hell House LLC seem so realistic. While in other horror films, it is a common trope for people to unabashedly walk towards danger, but in Hell House LLC, you can see their hesitation. The movie begins to pick up pace when Sarah Havel, one of the surviving crew of Hell House, agrees for Diane to interview her. Sarah looks pale and grief-stricken when she sits down to get interviewed. Upon being asked why she agreed to do this, and why she didn't speak up at the time, Sarah simply states that people would not accept the truth and chaos would break out. She then retrieves a bag and places it on the table, asking Diane to review all the tapes in the bag as they contain everything. The crew, as a ritual, would film their setting up process entirely to improve in the future and rewatch it for themselves. After this point, the movie is primarily driven by Sarah's tapes. 5 friends, namely Alex, Sarah, Mac, Tony, and Paul, are driving to a abandoned hotel to set up the haunted house for Halloween on August 23rd. They joke and bicker like any group of friends. Upon reaching the dilapidated hotel that does not even have functional electricity, we see how their dynamics blossom and lead them to start setting up. Alex is the head of the operation and is in a romantic relationship with Sarah, while Paul mans the camera for the majority of the film, only occasionally switching to Tony. They take a tour of the hotel and discover that the entire dining area has been smashed, while the basement has clown and freak dummies, and also some satanic star drawings on the wall. Alex calls all these such things as free production, while all others, especially Paul, are skeptical. They ask him what happened to the property that led them to shut down the hotel, and Alex brushed it off, saying that it was due to a lawsuit. They decide to use walkie-talkies to communicate with each other, but then they start malfunctioning and start producing high-pitched static noises. Sarah, on the tape where Diane is interviewing her, says that the real trouble only began when the friends started staying overnight, after the electricity was fixed, of course. Paul, who is responsible for filming, decides to film small updates at night from his bedroom. Hence, he expresses how lonely he is, but all the while, he is talking in the darkness, with only his face well lit due to the torch. We see a figure of a female looming at the exit of his room. He turns and spots her and calls out for Sarah, thinking it's her, but the figure turns around and leaves wordlessly. Soon, The actors of the Hell House arrive. The prominently shown actors on tape are Joey and Melissa, who are to be placed in the basement. Joey is a buff man who is both tasked with being a clown downstairs and also protecting Melissa from the visitors. This is because her act is being the scantily clad, tied-up damsel in distress. Melissa asks if everyone is okay with being in a place that has such horrible rumors. This shocks Paul, who was filming as Alex had not told him about the history of the place. With this, the footage cuts back to the people Diane was interviewing before Sarah. Here, we learn about the local story of the previous owner, Andrew Tully. Andrew Tully built the hotel in Abaddon, as that is the name of the demon in the Bible. Tully was also said to be the leader of a biblical cult. That explained the numerous Bibles and symbols in the basement. In his hotel, a mother and daughter that came to stay had disappeared. He avoided being arrested by producing false evidence of their departure, but his hotel's reputation had already been tainted. Tully ended up hanging himself in the dining room of the hotel. Moreover, in Diane's documentary, we are told that Joey had survived the night, but in fact, had refused to talk about it and hung himself 9 days later. The crew experienced numerous odd events, which kept getting worse and worse. Initially, Paul was the one who was at the receiving end of all these hauntings. Since he was the videographer, he was able to show evidence to the others later on. However, they all start dismissing it as pranks that Paul was pulling to get them all on edge. The clown dummy, whose head was fixed and unable to turn otherwise, began appearing in different places outside the basement at night, and even turning its head. Moreover, there is something the viewers can recognize, and not the characters in the film just yet. Paul filmed Sarah simply standing and staring at a statue of Jesus outside the hotel in the field. Her stance is exactly like the figure looming in Paul's room at night. One night, all 4 boys hear a loud, strange noise. They all leave to investigate it and begin hearing Sarah's whispering voice coming from the basement. They find her standing facing the door, speaking in an unrecognizable language. They call out to her, and she begins crying once she's out of the trance, not knowing how she got there. From the next day, tensions start running high, as Alex is adamant to make a profit from this venture, while the others are concerned about their well-being. Their loyalty to Alex holds them back. As the day of the opening nears, we see the preparations and decorations get completed. Paul is put on the task of filming a tour with the light effects. This, of course, goes wrong, where he ends up getting trapped in the dark room with flickering lights, where the dummies they had placed had increased and their positions had changed. Once Paul manages to get out, he immediately throws up, which is something the actor actually did and was not actually scripted. A few days later, Paul experiences another haunting at night. He is filming another one of his updates, while unbeknownst to him, a girl can be seen sitting on the floor on the left of his mattress. He notices her after a while and freaks out. When she looks up, she has ginger hair and startling blue eyes. Paul covers himself with the bed covers and calms his breathing to look out again. The girl has moved right next to his face, and that, of course, is where the footage cuts. The others discover that Paul has disappeared the next day, and Alex presumes he has quit. When the others ask him to call Paul, he does so, only to hear the same static noises of the walkie-talkies when the call is picked up. In Paul's absence, the hauntings continue. This time, Tony is the one who is doing the filming. The piano begins playing at night, along with the striking of the grandfather clock. Mac and Tony both call out for Paul, thinking he is again messing with them. They descend into the basement, where Tony sees the head of the clown dummies turn and rush to meet Mac. Mac puts this on Paul, stating that he does not believe in ghosts. They together find Paul sitting in a corner of the basement, in a trance and unable to speak. Paul remains like this for days leading up to the opening, and is asleep on the opening night as well. At this point, even Tony wants to quit, but stays for the sake of his friendship with Mac. We see an extended cut of all that went wrong on the opening night from the crew's perspective, along with the visitors that were inside. The gates of Hell House open at 8 p.m. The crew, other than Paul, who, as we mentioned previously, was asleep, can be seen working behind the scenes. We now see everything through Mac's GoPro perspective, and he is suddenly approached by Sarah, and she tells him that she just saw Paul, who simply stared at her. Then we see Joey, the clown in the basement, run past them. Mac understands that something is not right as Sarah leaves and the doors shut behind her. The walkie-talkies have completely malfunctioned, and Mac can no longer communicate with Tony or Alex. The footage shifts to that of the visitors in the basement, where Melissa, who is tied up, is screaming, "Please help me! This isn't part of the show!" as all the dummies have come to life. The footage gets disrupted as people scream and try to leave, but are trapped in the basement due to the crowd at the stairs. People are seen rushing out. We then hear the grandfather clock strike as the camera pans to the old portrait of a girl with ginger hair and striking blue eyes. After this footage, we get back to Diane interviewing Sarah. Diane, who is shocked by all of this information, asks Sarah if she was harmed on her way out. Sarah denies being hurt in any way at all, and this is unsettling considering the circumstances that day. Sarah then states that she is drained from the interview and requires a break. She tells Diane that she is staying in room 2C in the hotel that they are currently filming. Before the camera cuts and Diane packs her equipment, Sarah tells Diane to go visit Hell House nearby. When Diane states it is barricaded and they don't have permission, Sarah insists that it is important for her to see this place for herself. Diane convinces her cameraman Jonathan to come with her, despite his hesitation. When they are about to leave, they inquire at the desk where room number 2C is, and are informed that there is no such room. Neither has Sarah Havel been registered as a guest. Brushing this aside, Diane leaves for Hell House, leaving behind her crewmate Mitchell to review the rest of the footage. While Diane and Jonathan are filming at Hell House, we see the footage being reviewed. We see the gap from the time Sarah met Paul on the opening night to when she is finally outside. Sarah had stated that she was not harmed, but that was a lie. In this footage, we are shown how when she sees that Paul is awake, she rushes up to him, but he simply stares at her. Sarah backs away from him, but he grabs her and starts hitting her. He spots the camera and points it at the ceiling, while he continues to hit Sarah, and we see blood splatter on the walls. The footage then gets disrupted. The next scene is of Sarah's bloodied face, coughing up more blood as she dies, and only Paul's legs are in the next shot as he stands over her body. Someone off-screen drags Sarah away as we see Paul walk out of frame. Only for the footage, he gets disturbed and walks right back. Paul then, as though in a trance, slides down to the wooden floor and is now in frame. He then slits his own throat. This is where the footage ends. All the while, Diane and Jonathan are out exploring Hell House. At Sarah's request, who is the same girl we just saw die on tape. They both come across blood marks on the floor and see all the places that they have just seen on tape. Diane is fascinated while Jonathan wants them to leave. They begin arguing until they see a room door with 2C written on it. They both stop dead in their tracks, and Diane unlocks the door without heeding to Jonathan. They see Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed with her back facing the door. Diane approaches her gingerly as Sarah abruptly gets up and turns. Her face is bloodied like in the tapes, and she approaches Diane and Jonathan, who are both screaming. The footage disrupts and stops here. Why should you watch Hell House LLC? Hell House LLC used the genre of found footage in a manner in which a film does not seem choppy or lazily put together. Tiny details link to each other and are carefully considered in the film. One such example is Sarah stating, "I'm in a better place," right at the start as a response to the question, "How are you?" But it is a phrase used for the dead, which she turns out to be in the end. The pacing makes the viewer tense, and the creepy scenes definitely send a shiver down your spine. Moreover, the story of the crew's friendship and how the haunting changed their dynamics is one that is very well done, albeit they all begin to slowly fall apart. It is the classic case of the Ouija board, where everybody begins to accuse each other of messing with them by moving the planchet. Yet here, there is an added layer of dread that the viewer can experience as well as they see the supernatural incidents unfold clearly and just wish for these friends to trust each other. This gap in their communication ultimately leads them to their doom, making Hell House LLC one hell of a ride. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to send a like and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. For marvelous videos, I'm Rylan. Have a good one, be safe, and thanks for watching.
Let's get the fuck out of here. Oh, fuck. Oh my god. Oh my god. Help me! Oh my god.